Hi, everyone. Dr. Carolyn Coca-Ross here, and today is number 3 out of 4 for our Food Freedom Challenge. And I'm really fortunate to have my friend and colleague, Courtney Stoddard, with me. She's a registered dietitian and also she's the head dietitian for the Anchor program. And we've worked together for over a decade.
Yes, for sure.
You started when you were really young, but that already ages me. So Courtney's going to be talking about, food trauma within the family and in childhood. And, we've talked before about cultural food trauma and sports related food trauma. And some of the things that I've been hearing that I think Courtney may touch on are things where patients will say they don't trust themselves around food because they were never able or allowed as a child to pick what they wanted to eat or not eat. Someone controlled their food. Also, the comparing yourself to others may have started in the family. Some family have a deal where they make a child who's maybe living in a larger body feel like they don't deserve to eat certain foods, or they're not allowed to eat treats as the other kids in the family are. So I'm going to turn it over to Courtney now, and she'll go on and get us started on our Food Freedom Challenge for today.
Okay, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on here talking about this. And I'm going to share my screen with a couple of slides. Okay, here we go. Okay, my computer's a bit slow. Okay, so yeah, the food-related trauma from childhood is what we're going to be talking about for a few minutes today. And basically, this starts out talking about how our relationship with food starts in childhood, as so many things do and are imprinted on our brains. Having a healthy relationship with food as a child can lay the groundwork for the healthy relationship with food for life. And so, there's lots of things that can impact that or kind of make that a negative food relationship that then may carry on for the rest of one's life or, into adulthood. And then body image also starts in childhood. Having a healthy body image as a child, again, just like the food relationship, can lay the groundwork for the healthy body image for life, or vice versa. If certain things happen that impact that body image in a negative way, that can shape a negative body image into adulthood. So the food-related traumas from childhood that we're referring to are things such as being put on a diet as a child or a teen, growing up in a restrictive household environment that may have had food rules, and growing up around negative body talk, or even being told as a child or teen that your size was wrong. That was not okay. So yeah, I just want to spend a few minutes kind of touching on each of these examples. So being put on a diet as a child or teen, this may seem kind of normal, to a lot of people because it happens so often. And yet it can be traumatic. It is traumatic, and it's really not okay.
Yeah. Courtney, if I can just interrupt here for a minute. I know a lot of parents are sitting back thinking, well, I'm trying to help my kid by getting them to lose weight so that they won't be teased in school. So, and also, or also my kid's pediatrician told me that I needed to put them on a diet. So how do you respond
Mhm.
to that kind of concern by parents? It's a valid concern because everybody tells you that being quote unquote overweight by BMI is not healthy.
Yes. And, it is really unfortunate that medical providers who we look to for advice are recommending, weight loss in a child or a teen. Um, and so what I, would say to that is that children are constantly growing and developing.
Yeah.
So they'll grow up in height and then they'll grow out in weight, and that alternates and continues on, until late teens, early 20s. And so it's really not accurate to ever label a child or a teen as overweight because their bodies are constantly changing, and they may not stay that way. They may naturally belong in a larger body, and so but no matter what, to impose a restrictive diet during that growth and development stage is only going to disconnect the child from their natural hunger cues that
Mhm.
they have always relied on to tell them, when to eat and how much to eat, and really confuse their body, um, potentially cause negative body image because they're told that their size is wrong. They have to make it smaller.
Mm.
So for lots of reasons, as opposed to just letting them naturally grow and develop how they um, on the track that they are on, and really have more of a positive relationship with food, which is more important than weight ultimately. um, and being put on a diet as a child or teen can actually oftentimes end up doing the opposite than maybe the doctor or the parent is hoping for, because the restricting tends to lead to then overeating or even eating in secret, because they feel shame or guilt now, for eating certain foods.
I
Mhm.
think if we could just get over with the information that diets are often one of the biggest triggers for the development of eating disorders as well. So
Absolutely.
whether it be binge eating disorder or anorexia or bulimia, often kids start with being put on a diet or going on a diet with their friends, and that can then lead, particularly in people who are vulnerable to the development of eating disorders.
Yes. And I hear that often
Me
in
too.
my office. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the youngest that I've heard is someone who was 5 years old and was taken to Weight Watchers. Her mom was a lifelong member of Weight Watchers, and she was taken at age 5 to, make sure that she didn't get too big. And that stuck with her her entire life.
Yeah.
So, and led to a lifetime of being on diets, off diets, on diets, off diets, and just struggling with their body image and a sense of self-esteem too, and also the relationship with
Right.
food. Um,
Yeah. That's so sad. And had, how differently it could have turned out if that parent had broken the diet cycle as opposed to, reinforced it with their child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, if you were put on a diet as a child or teen, just know it would make sense if you had, not the best relationship with food now. Um, Another food-related trauma from childhood is growing up in maybe a restrictive household. Maybe there was food rules. Maybe there were certain foods not kept in the house, or that were off limits. Um, and this can also be traumatic. Um, this can cause some, rebellion, with food as a child that then can actually carry over into adulthood, rebelling, against those certain foods that maybe that was all that was in the house or you were allowed to eat. And so it might, cause a limited food world later in life, a smaller food world. Or those food rules could have carried over, to something that you currently follow because of that childhood experience, and, which can just cause a negative relationship with food or body, or even lead to an eating disorder. And then lastly, growing up around negative body talk in the household. And so this could be a parent who, diets often, who might openly say negative things about their own body. I look terrible in this, or I wish I didn't have this stomach, or, certain body comments on their own body. It could also be growing up with someone in the household who is judgmental of other people's bodies and maybe would openly comment or make judgments based on size about other people. And even maybe growing up having someone in the household negatively comment on your own body.
Yeah. Or calling you names, jokingly calling you names. I've said in other videos that family is the number one cause of weight stigma. So I had a patient whose father used to joke, quote unquote, jokingly call her Miss Piggy. And that was, really hurtful for her.
Yes. Yeah, I hear that often too. A lot of times it might be a grandparent that jokingly does that. And yes, that sticks. Things like that stick. All of these examples, because that's when the brain is developing and you're kind of developing these core beliefs and messages that may stick with you for a very long time. So that's kind of a vital time that you can get the wrong message, so to speak, that can interfere with those relationships.
Absolutely.
So, what can we do about this? If you experienced any of these or other types of food-related childhood traumas, what can you do to break that cycle, to heal your relationship with food? Here are just some small steps that I work with my clients on. One is so if you did grow up with food rules and you have your own food rules, maybe as a result, to make a list of these.
So what's an example of a family food rule?
We only eat dessert on Friday.
Okay.
Or if we're going to have pizza, but we're going to have to go take a walk afterwards. So the compensating with exercise can be one. Or we don't drink soda. We don't keep soda in the house, or candy, or insert any other food. So those are some examples. We don't eat past 7:00. So making a list of these food rules, just to kind of like lay it out. Sometimes they're a lot more than you might think. And then try to think about where it came from. Is this something that came later in life because you did a diet, or is this something that did come from growing up in your household? And like, what's the purpose of it now? Does it make sense? And I would encourage you to list a counter. So how can you counter that rule with a different fact, or reframe it in a different way? So for example, if it's we only eat dessert on Friday, a counter could be, I give myself permission to eat dessert on any day, simple as that. And then to challenge those rules one by one, so one at a time when you feel ready, challenging it. And that basically just means breaking that rule. and seeing what that feels like. Another exercise is practicing giving yourself permission to eat those maybe off limits foods that you had or didn't have in the household growing up. So foods that might have been considered bad, or if you were put on a diet that you weren't allowed to have, to actually, list those out and try those one by one. And sometimes people need a little bit of support to do this, and that could be a close friend or other support person. And then finally, in terms of body image, to make a list of body gratitudes can be really helpful. And this is different than like positive body affirmations that might have to do with, appearance. This is more, what are you thankful that your body does for you today? And listing that out. If you were to take a glance at that list every day, once a week, that can really help to build up some body appreciation. So.
Yeah, I think these are really important. And also, if you are a parent, examining what kind of food rules you're teaching your children, because this is almost intergenerational food trauma. Often starts with a parent or grandparent, and then it's passed down to the next generation and then the next generation, so that you have generations of people who are struggling with their relationship with food and with body image issues. So one of the things you have here of food rules is like, you could apply that in your family to what are you teaching, what food rules are you teaching your child?
Mm-hmm.
And then the list of gratitudes is, I think another thing that's important to do with kids is to not only judge them or give them praise for their appearance, especially girls, because you're a pretty little girl, and then you have all of those, well, good girls don't fill in the blank. So good girls don't, eat too much dessert, or good girls don't go back for a second serving of French fries, etc. So being able to, give some kind of praise and reinforcement to your children about how they're doing in school, or how they're doing in sports, or so that everything isn't just about appearance. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. So you're so smart and you're so strong, and all of those types of compliments are so important.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff we do is unconscious. So if you ask a mother, are you teaching your child to become a dieter or to give her an eating disorder, they'd say, no, of course not. I'm trying to protect my child. I'm trying to help my child. But the thing that helps children the most is feeling like they're okay and accepted, and that they're particularly accepted and safe within their own families. And if they are not safe from someone either in the family or outside the family making comments about their body or what they're eating, then that is a real ding to self-esteem, which is probably the number one thing that children need to have a healthy relationship with food and with their bodies. So
I agree. And I will just add that the best thing, and something that's also so important, is the modeling of the parents. So if the parents are practicing the philosophy of all foods fit, and not having food restrictions and not dieting, the children are going to see that and take that on as well in terms of their relationship with food.
Yeah, the modeling is really important, because a lot of parents think that they're doing the right thing by saying, oh, diets aren't good for you, and we really want to be healthy and all of that. But the kids see them skipping dinner or saying, oh, I'm not hungry, so I'm going to skip dinner, and or see them in the mirror body checking and saying negative things about their bodies. And that is worth 1,000 words. What they see and experience from what you're doing is going to stick more than what you tell them to do.
Absolutely. Or let's go get ice cream, and the kid gets ice cream, but the mom never does. They see that.
Yeah, right.
They start to pick up on that. So
And they can figure it out. They're not,
mhm.
kids are smart and they listen and learn more than we ever think. So, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
That's a great challenge to leave people with. And I hope that the people listening to this will try this and see what you can learn from it about what's going on in your own family.
I do too.
Well, thanks so much, Courtney, for being a part of this. And as I mentioned, Courtney is our head dietitian for the Anchor program. She's been with the Anchor program since the beginning, and we've worked together for quite a while. And I hope that everyone listening will take this to heart so that we can interrupt this intergenerational transmission of diet mentality and yo-yo dieting. I would love to see the next generation of little girls really like themselves. I just read it, by the way, Courtney, I just read a survey that said only 6% of American women are happy with their bodies. 6%.
Wow.
And I also saw in that an astounding statistic that 14% of American women would be willing to give up 1 to 5 years of life to have their then ideal body. So they would chop off up to 5 years of their life just to be thin, which
Wow.
is, it's amazing to me that that's what our values are
Mhm.
now
Yeah.
in America. It's not about, like you said, being strong or
Mhm.
even being healthy. It's really just about being thin and calling it a bunch of different names. So,
Right. Yeah, and that you would sacrifice precious time
yeah.
with loved ones and all these experiences that
And
happen.
and
Yeah.
we know this is coming from the family because it's already starting in 3-year-olds who are wanting to diet or wanting to avoid playing with toys that show like a doll in a bigger body. And so it has to start in the family. So
Yeah,
that's where it needs to change, is in the family.
absolutely.
And if anybody's thinking, well, I really feel that I need to do this for my patient's good health, I would ask you to ask yourself, what have all these food rules done in your life? Like, how much suffering has this dieting caused in your life? And why would you think that it would be any different for your child? Do you want them
Yeah,
to spend their lifetime suffering in the way that you have? And if not, let's start with figuring out these food rules, as
let's do,
Courtney has taught us today. All right,
let's do something
Courtney.
different.
Yeah, thank you so much. See
Thank
you
you for
soon.
having me.
All right,
Bye.
bye.